All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, where we discuss the latest DevOps trends, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's November 19th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse sells AWS reference architectures to get you production ready in just 2 weeks. So if you'd like to learn more, head over to cloudposse.com. So how can you maximize today's session? First off, our format is very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, ask questions, and if you're curious about any of our open source tools like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. And for those on the recording, we do host these calls live, so don't miss out. You can register at cloudposse.com/office hours. Just enter in your email, and you'll get an invitation with a Zoom link to join these live sessions. I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with your team. You'll find the recording posted to our YouTube channel in just a few hours at youtube.com/cloudposse. So let's get into current events. There was a lot of stuff going on this past week. I have two slides of discussion topics. So let's see here. One sec. Gonna see. All right. Yeah, first one. If you were assuming you weren't living under a rock, the internet went down a couple times this past week. Everything from ChatGPT to Cloud Code to X. Microsoft Azure separately was hit with a 15 terabit DDoS attack from a IoT botnet. Cloudflare had another embarrassing gaffe. They had a rules file that basically hit the upper limit for whatever they had configured on it. So that crashed their whole WAF network, basically, and took many hours before they recovered. So that was the other outage this week. Anyone have more details on or went deeper in on the Cloudflare postmortem? Yeah, you'll remember they had a similar type of outage. I don't know how it was many months ago now, where they had a misconfiguration that took down their networks. One thing I came across this past week I thought was interesting. It makes total sense that this is where Docker Hub would be going. As you know, Docker was acquired by Mirantis, and Mirantis has been laying down the law, introducing rate limits, cutting back on a lot of open. The ability to pull images has been hindered by the rate limits, and you have to get basically a paid account in order to bypass those limits and so forth. One of the things they now offer are hardened base images that you can use in your pipelines. This is making it easier then for you to achieve certain levels of compliance where you need to show that you do that. Now, the biggest problem with this is it's FU pricing, apparently, because they don't put any prices down anywhere. And I went looking, trying to understand what that pricing was, and only found contact sales links. What was interesting, though, and caught me off guard in a good way, was that, oh, look, Helm charts. Oh, right, because Helm charts can now be distributed as OCI containers. So basically, what they're doing is building a marketplace for OCI hardened images, of which Docker containers is one thing, Helm charts is another. But this is interesting because, like with OpenTofu, you can, I think, pull Terraform modules from OCI registries. So now that means that it could also be a platform for compliant Terraform modules, possibly. Where this gets interesting to me is like, interesting, could they now provide a way for other vendors to provide hardened images under this, and then it's like a rev share model or something? And we've talked about like ways of monetizing Terraform modules, and this might be something. All right, any questions or thoughts on this? All right, next. So the day has come, or the time has come. So Kubernetes has been around for, geez, like 10 years now. I remember the first contract we did at Cloud Posse was implementing Kubernetes before the advent of COPS, before it was easy to set up, and that was a nightmare. NGINX has been the dominant way of allowing traffic to ingress, to flow into a Kubernetes cluster. The NGINX Ingress was the very first implementation of an ingress controller for Kubernetes. And under the hood, it was literally NGINX scripted to reload its configuration when things in the Kubernetes cluster changed. Pretty heavy-handed way of, like, literally every single time any pod anywhere in the cluster that was connected to the ingress restarted, it would rebuild the NGINX ingress configuration and go. Well, turns out that this follows that whole, one little small open source project maintained by one guy in Nebraska. That's actually been the NGINX Ingress story, apparently. And there is a better way in Kubernetes through the Gateway API to handle Ingress now. And that, as of, I think, 2023, is the recommended way of doing it. So they have made the decision to stop maintenance of this in March 2026. But I doubt pretty much anyone's using this anymore. If you're using something like the Amazon load balancer controller, that's still fully supported. And while that's not the Gateway API, it is still a first-class way of doing ingress on Kubernetes in AWS. Anything more to add to this?
Yeah, we're actually impacted on our end. We use it quite a bit. I was curious if anyone else here is also using this in production currently, or if everyone's migrated to AWS or Gateway API or one of the other 10 or 20 options that you have available.
Exactly.
Yeah, I am. My production is practice a little bit too, but it's a very small setup, so it's going to be easier to migrate. I just got to get the time to do it.
Got it. Have you decided what gateway you're going to migrate to?
Probably HA proxy for in between it and the NLB, just because we have HA proxies throughout our areas.
Are you doing on-prem Kubernetes, Zoe?
No, we're doing EKS.
And why don't you use like the EKS load balancer controller and instead would be leaning towards something like HA proxy?
Cost, really. With it, it spins up a new load balancer each time.
Yeah, that's true.
My company is a very cautious company, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so having it where we just have one load balancer for everything has been really nice.
Okay, I gotcha. Anyone else? What are you moving to? All right. Moving on then. What else do I have on my list here? So it's come up a few times recently about like Tailscale and Cloudflare zero trust tunnels, and there's the product at Cloudflare has undergone a lot of product development, you could say, and gone by many different names, making it a little bit confusing to understand. So I thought this was a pretty interesting write-up that breaks down all the concepts in layman's terms for how Cloudflare Zero Trust works, and comparing it to Tailscale, which is like the runner-up for doing a lot of those similar types of things. So if you've been curious about it, this is a great article. We'll share the link for you to go through. Google has announced their code wiki, which is backed by Gemini, of course. We talked about another service, I forget what it was called, that did the same thing. It has a lot of the mainstream projects already indexed. I haven't vetted it myself. I was disappointed that it didn't have Atmos in here, so I did submit it, but it still hasn't indexed. So. We'll see. Where I find this interesting is not as a replacement for documentation, but as a backup for documentation or inspiration for documentation. Seeing how it approaches the documentation for, like in our case, if we had access to this and they had Atmos, I would be very interested to see how we could improve Atmos documentation by seeing how Gemini approach the information architecture, what examples it presents, and so forth. All right. Any input on this? Next one was, yeah, so I don't know about you guys. I confess I do sometimes use Archive.today or .ph or .in or any of the other 15 domain aliases. There was an article that came out recently saying that there was basically an FBI investigation again behind the operators of the site. And there's a mystery surrounding who operates this site. It's been around for a very long time. It's evaded shutdown and DOS attacks and all kinds of things. It's still around, still works. If you ever kind of, you're paying for Wall Street Journal, you just forgot your login and you need to go see what that article says, you can use this to view that article. Or like when somebody posts a link on Hacker News and it's behind a paywall and you want to read the content, you can use Archive.today. So you could see that there is media company interest possibly in getting a site like this shut down. Well, this is interesting because this is by AdGuard, the browser plugin that blocks ads and makes generally the internet a little safer to use. They received a notice to block the set of properties here. And the assertion was that the site was hosting child porn, basically, and not doing anything to take it down. Serious allegation, right? And obviously that would be something that they'd be concerned about. But when they actually reached out to Archive.today about that content, I believe they said either that they hadn't been contacted or that they'd already taken down that content. And they showed records of that. Well, upon further investigation by AdGuard, there were a lot of suspicious things about the evidence used to claim that they should take this information down, of which at least 2 pieces evidence were forged as part of that. And the domain name behind the company trying to do this was just registered, like I was either at the beginning of the year or a few months ago or something like that. So a lot of red flags there that this process was being abused to get the content taken down or get the site blocked. Next content was, any thoughts on that? Anybody? All right. This one, I did forget to go deeper on this before office hours. Basically, you can now request claims for OIDC tokens with new scopes. I haven't given it more thought on the implications of this and what possibilities it enables. Anybody? All right, so I've been a big proponent of an app called Willow Voice. I think they might have come out of Y Combinator. It's been really transformational for me and our team in doing voice transcriptions. If you've used like dictation on Mac OS, it's cool, but very dated by today's standards of transcription. It gets a lot wrong. But one of the nice things you can do with the dictation app is like, right, you double click on the function key on your terminal, and you can just dictate what you want it to say. Well, Willow did that, but better. You only have to click the button once, and its quality of transcription was a lot better than with the native dictation app. They also have an iOS version now, and I've been using this for a few months now and been happy with it. That said, I've also been very frustrated with it. And if you use a lot of technical jargon, if you're using it with vibe coding, which I'm doing a lot on the side, my team does, it gets a lot of things wrong all the time, including saying Claude. It cannot hear me say Claude. It hears cloud every single time. And it keeps trying to update my cloud MD file and creating cloud MD files no matter how many times I tell it not to do it. So I gave up. I started looking for alternatives, and I found something over the weekend that shows very promising results for me. I've not been cursing at it nearly as much, and that's how my kind of scale of how satisfied I am. So it's spokenly.app. And what I like about it is it looks like a dictation app built by a developer for developers. So it lets you plug in like any model out there for voice transcription. It lets you plug in your own OpenAPI key, so you can use the transcribe API, which uses Whisper to transcribe. And that's just been really nice, really accurate for me. And you can control the system prompt for the transcription, and you can have multiple system prompts. So you can have a prompt for like when you're writing emails, how you want it to format. You can have a prompt for like if you're coding, how you want to do it. Like make sure code terms are in backticks, and use code fences around commands, etc. And then it can format that way for you. So check it out if you haven't. Anybody using dictation like this?
No, I just had one question for you in the way that you're using it. When you say you're using it for vibe coding, are you using it for your prompts, or are you actually editing the code you generate?
So let's say you're using Claude Code. I use a certain. Personally, I've gotten totally addicted to conductor.build, which I think is the best way to vibe code these days, better than Cursor, and it just builds on Claude Code. It supports OpenX, etc. All of these are Git workspaces. You can add as many repositories as you want here on the side. You could create as many work trees. Work trees are a native feature of Git, right, where you can have a complete copy of the code. It handles the process then of opening the pull request and so forth. But you see this here, ask Claude anything, this little box down here. This here is where you prompt, right? And usually you're typing in there. It's just transformational though, when all I have to do is press the function key, say what I want to say, let go of the function key and hit enter, and then it goes there. So I'm basically conversing with Claude all day long.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Anyone else doing that? How's that working for you?
I've also swapped from Willow to Spokenly, and it does help with some of the weird situations that Willow was getting into before. But I found that it's worse at like technical terms. In Willow, I built up a library of a bunch of terms that I use frequently that are unique, and then it was able to get them all. But maybe I haven't configured it for Spokenly.
Yeah, you can probably add those to the prompt to help inform it what terms you might be referring to. I haven't tried that, but I didn't have the problem yet myself.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's also a little slower if you like separate the thought into multiple dictations. Like I'll like say a couple words, release the key, then say a couple more, but each time it processes takes like 10 seconds, which isn't much, but it adds up.
Are you using your own OpenAPI key, or are you using the built-in service that they have?
The built-in.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I added my OpenAPI key. I'm not noticing a lag that is any more than what we had with Willow.
I'll have to try that.
Yeah, that could be it. Next announcement. And following on the heels of that, if you are using Copilot for code reviews, one of the nice things that you can do to improve the quality of those reviews is creating instruction files. And what's nice about that is you can create them and have them apply to when certain files or paths have been changed. I'd really love to use this across our open source module ecosystem to accelerate PR reviews by the volunteers that help out. What I haven't yet understood is like how, like if you have hundreds of repositories and they're all kind of need the same instructions, it hasn't been clear to me if you can use like the centralized .github repository because all the examples talk about using the .github folder, and I'm not sure those work together. So they recommend using this convention where it's .instructions.md. The name can be whatever, but then you have the keyword apply to in the front matter of that to specify how to use it. Here you can see in the front matter of the markdown. And related to that is using custom agents. So if you're using Claude Code, you're probably starting to use agents or have been using agents for a while. Agents are amazing. It's how you manage the context of your agentic programming. Like the context window, right, is always limited. And if you're trying to do a lot of things in the same chat, it's in the same context. It's always, what do you say, like compressing that context window and losing some data. With an agent, each agent is operating autonomously with a clean context focused on the instructions in that agent file. And they're really easy to get started with. Here's how to do it with GitHub Copilot. It's similar to with Claude, if you've been using that. What you're going to do is you're going to create a file in Markdown like this with the standard front matter here with the tools that it has access to, a description which helps Copilot know when it should use this agent, and you put these in the .github/agents folder. So I can't show you how it works with agents. We are not using them yet, but with Atmos, we've been using a lot of agents with the development to accelerate things. And every new feature we're implementing with Atmos, we're introducing agents with that as well. I could only imagine how awesome it would be if A, this stuff had existed years ago, B, if we'd started using this sooner, etc. But here's an example. So with Atmos, well, one of the first things that became evident is we needed an agent that helped us develop agents. And it knows the best practices of agents, that they should be under 20K, that they should have front matter in a specific format, that any preferences that we have, the agent should be aware of other agents and when to use them. So that's and then you want to keep your agents up to date, right? If you are asking for new instructions or you add new scope or new functionality to the thing that agent does, the agent needs to be aware of it. So there's the life cycle of an agent you got to be aware of as well. So here's some real examples. Recently, we implemented a new flag handler in Atmos built on top of Cobra. But one of the issues with Cobra is trying to get Cobra to, which is the standard command line flag parser in Golang that works with Viper, which is how you manage configurations in Golang, and they work together. But getting precedents to work consistently requires a lot of boilerplate everywhere, and it's so easy to get it wrong. And I wanted a type-safe way of doing flag handling in Atmos because we kept having to solve the same kinds of problems across all kinds of commands. So we implemented something called the flag handler, but it's advanced, right? To get started, especially if everything is aware of how Cobra and Viper works. So this agent knows how to use that functionality, those packages in Atmos now. So every time we build a new command, it uses this agent autonomously. And then that agent is aware of another agent that we wrote for Atmos, which is which I don't see here for some reason, which is the command registry agent. And the command registry agent is how to manage adding new commands into Atmos. So with this paradigm, we're able to have more and more work happen effectively without the context losing sight of what we were trying to do. Anybody have insights on this? I'm sure there are people here bigger experts on this than I am.
Have you played around with skills at all? Because it feels like this has some overlap with.
No, I haven't heard of it. What is Skittles?
Skills. So Claude
skills.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I may be asking the ignorant question here because I feel like there's too many of these things to keep track of, but it's interesting that I'm going down the path of like thinking, oh, skills would be really good to start investing in for different repositories and, collectively for our organization. And yet you're using agents in a way that there is some overlap, but it seems like it's like skills combines a couple interesting things where this combines more of a, it's just the domain expertise.
Yeah, and I skills came out relatively recently, and there is a lot of overlap between them. I haven't fully grokked I haven't developed thoughts or opinions on how to use skills yet because of that lack of understanding.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to dig into both now, and I'll share if I find anything revolutionary.
That sounds good. Let's see what else. All right, so that was that. And last one was just something you don't see often in AWS, flat rate pricing. So AWS has released now flat rate pricing plans available for simple website delivery, like static site delivery. Think anything that can be basically delivered through CloudFront. I haven't compared how those stand up to other flat rate prices, but I'm guessing it's not competitive with Cloudflare. All right, that's all I got. Anyone got something else interesting this past week that caught your attention? Sorry, I'm just catching up here on the Zoom chat. I was not reading it.
Yeah, it was just along the lines like if you guys are doing any clever things that you could, throw out into an open repo just for us to explore, that would be really interesting across the board. So if it's anything that's working for local development on Atmos in the realm of Claude.
Oh, like as a end user of Atmos versus a developer of Atmos?
Exactly. As an end user of Atmos, anything that you're finding useful in the realm of like, Terraform.
I think
the agents perform a little bit better, whatever it would be.
I think we'll start looking into it a little bit more for Atmos and providing that. Basically in the form of agents, probably, and a component composer, a stack configurator, a cloud architect. Each of those would be perfect examples of different specialized agents that can work together to implement a specific outcome. But more on that to come. Nothing yet to share. But I think we'll start implementing something for that.
One thing to share that, so I've been using, I'll share this back because you shared Conductor with me. But if you're ever in the case where you pretty much have these long running agents nowadays, then you're probably hot swapping between a bunch of different things and you don't know when an agent completes or not. You can use hooks now and use an MCP server into, I think, 11 labs. And then you give your agents voices at the end of it, which is great. So then I went further because obviously you don't want those voices to always be talking to you. So I created a command that can toggle them on and off. But
That's pretty funny.
yeah,
my wife kept asking me for a while, like, who's messaging you? Who keeps messaging you? I'm saying, oh, my agent just finished its task because the kid plays that, ding.
Plays the ding. Yeah.
Yeah. In Conductor, that's a feature flag you can enable. But I could only imagine, if I said
you can
tab
actually
voices.
It can do a summary too. It's like completed X and Y,
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Do you have that working, Cyrus?
Yeah, I have it where like now. Forgive me, I wouldn't be able to. It was months ago that I put it together, and I was following some other individual online who had put it. I could forward you that link and how they're doing it if that's useful.
Yeah. Share that with me. I'd like to take a look at it.
All right, great.
So I guess we can move into Q&A. Any questions we can discuss today?
This is just kind of a random question. Well, first of all, it's good to be back in the mix with you all. I've missed the past few sessions, probably a little bit, maybe it might have been 5 or 6 weeks or so. So good to be catching y'all in real time. I've been listening to the replay or whatever, but it's good to chop it up in real time. I'm working with some folks that are trying to move from branch-based deployments to tag-based deployments, building artifacts and then deploying the artifacts into the target compute. Mostly web stuff, monolithic application, front end, back end. Just wondering if anybody's had a similar experience and or if you haven't, any sort of toils and snares that might be lurking that could be avoided as we proceed into this venture.
So yeah, we do tag or what we call release-based deployments. We use GitHub Actions. I believe use Bamboo, is it? Or
the team's working with Bitbucket.
They're working with Bitbucket, yeah. So what we do for that is that we create a workflow that triggers on release events, and then we use that as a very easy way to promote a release then into staging, and then with approval into production. What are the gotchas there? I would say the biggest gotcha is knowing what release is deployed where. And I'm guessing you have some way of tracking that with the integration within Atlassian.
Yes, well, I think Bitbucket, out of all of the hyperscale Git repos, does an excellent job with their deployments tab of showing you what commit is deployed into what environment. So that provides some visibility, maybe more so for the developers. The product team, they live in Jira more so than in a repo. But so I'm also trying to your point, trying to figure out how to show the product team what releases are deployed where from their console. You know what I mean? From their point of visibility. That's definitely one of the biggest things there.
So on GitHub, we have an example of how it looks with our release-based deployments. I can walk, since this is something we've just kind of finished updating, I can walk through how this works since it's related to your question. So what we have is in GitHub then a workflow on release, triggers on when a release is published. And then you can see it has one job for staging, one job for production. This one needs staging to complete. And then on GitHub, an environment like this can be configured with an environment protection rule. And that's what can require a certain team or individual to click approve in order for that deployment to go through. And then each environment is represented on the right side here. So you have deployments, and here we have preview environment, dev environment, and production environment. Let's see what else we got here. If I click expand, here you can see staging as well. We have a security environment, which does things leveraging a very special environment with elevated access to run some checks. But otherwise, this shows what release then is deployed where. And for those of you who were on office hours a few weeks ago, when we were soliciting input on like what has worked well for you for ECS deployments, this is our now V2 for ECS deployments that I'm really happy with. I think we'll do a demo in about 2 weeks. I would do it next week, but I'm going skiing. How this works is quite nice. This represents an application repository. It gives teams ownership over the lifecycle of their ECS task, container definitions, sidecars, as well as the ability to easily deploy things locally, as well as in CI in a very consistent way. Previous to this, we had tried to orchestrate something quite different, where ECS tasks would live in the infrastructure monorepo. And we played this whole song and dance about how application repos could trigger events over here in the infrastructure repo, and how the infrastructure repo could trigger events over here in the app repo, and trying to get all that out was not worth it. We have done a mea culpa on that, and here is what that looks like. So in main.go, this is just an example application. This happens to show a color and a count that keeps changing every second. So you can see that that service is alive. And then when we go over to the Docker file, this represents like a Docker file that the application team can own and customize and change whatever they want in there. And then you have Terraform. Underneath Terraform, you have two things. You have your components. And here is a task. This is the ECS task. It's vanilla Terraform code that the team can own. In this example, rather than trying to make it overly dry, we actually have all the code in here rather than putting it in a module or vendoring it from some other source. We had a lesson learned on this, which is that as a company doing open source, trying to codify how to do ECS task deployments as an open source module is a lost cause. There's just too many things that it can do now, and the complexity of the module grows and grows and grows, which defeats a bit of the purpose of having a module. Instead, what works really well is a team or a company or an organization can own a proprietary version of what it is to deploy an ECS task. And then you don't have to re-implement the whole spec of everything that an ECS task can do. You implement what you use. And now that's manageable, and now that can be reused. This is an example of following that pattern. And then you have your configuration. So you have like your production environment. It imports the defaults for that. And then you can override anything for that. This is here we're just overriding the workspace for that. We can go into dev, and it's the same thing. The other thing here, which is cool, is we've integrated with Atmos auth. I don't know if you saw the demo on that, Michael, but I guess you saw it on the recordings.
Yeah.
Atmos auth is really nice because it lets us define all the identities that are used to plan and apply this. So here you can see these are the identities that a developer could leverage locally, provided they've been granted access to them. And then Atmos handles automatically the authentication with that piece. The workflows for this are super easy. Previously, we implemented, I think, too many layers of abstraction for a deployment. So what we've done here is simplified those. So the feature branch workflow has 2 jobs: build and deploy. It takes you less than 60 seconds, 45 seconds to look through this and probably understand more or less what's going on. Install Atmos, check out the repo, authenticate with the cloud provider. In this case, it's using Atmos auth to get the identity, actually, which is kind of cool. So Atmos auth handles that. Then it's logging into ECR, building the Docker image. Separately, we deploy when build is successful, using a specific environment for previews, and this deploys a ephemeral ECS environment. Similarly, there are workflows then for the main branch. What happens when you merge into main, that automatically goes to dev, so you have a continuously delivered dev environment. Release is what happens every time you cut a release. And preview cleanup, that's what happens when a pull request is merged or closed. That's what cleans up the resources that were provisioned as part of that. It should be also mentioned that the preview environments are only deployed when there's a label I'll deploy. So it's not unnecessarily deploying that task.
Yeah, that's interesting, that last part, because that's the other thing as we move into this sort of process, the naming of the tag and the application of the name to an environment. So like if you want to deploy to the staging environment, then the tag's got to have some sort of staging dash version number or something like that.
Maybe that's what we used to do. We used to create a tag of a image for each environment, and then when we said to deploy, it would use that tag. Now we don't do that anymore, and instead we're using that concept of well, there's a few reasons. So like, let me go over here to why don't I see it? Yeah, actions. If I go to release, what's nice is if you use stages in your pipeline, we really want to see these go from left to right. Yeah. And that's what we can do here. And so that's why we already know what the tag is here. It's, zero, in this case, it's 0.7.0. So 0.7.0, we promote that tag. Then we deploy to staging, wait for approval. Then we deploy to production. Same tag, same environment, two different environments, and no retagging.
Yeah. That totally makes sense to me, and seems like the better approach for the promotion. My concern is that there are multiple dev environments. So it's like I guess in this case, it would be preview environments. As the developers are working on features, say you have, arbitrary, but 10 developers, they're both, all 10 working on different features. So all 10 have their own preview environment. So they want to tag the code in such a way that it deploys to preview environment 1 versus preview environment 2 versus preview environment 3, and so on.
So that's actually what this is doing. Let me go into the configuration for that. And it's unlimited. So in the stack configuration for preview, we are just using the PR number to as an act. So we use null label. Are you familiar with null label?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So null label supports something called attributes, so that you can just add any other arbitrary metadata so that something is unique. So we're using attributes with the PR number, and then updating the workspace, the Terraform workspace that is used, to use that as well, the PR number. So this is what ensures that every PR is deployed to its own ECS task and that committee. And the developer doesn't need to know anything about that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for the insight.
Yeah. Hopefully that provides something.
Yeah. It helps. I know there's no like one size fits all for every single, team and their deployment workflow. I just appreciate getting input from folks that have traveled a similar road, so I can avoid hurdles and stumbling blocks along the way. Yeah,
for sure. Check in with us, in a few weeks or a couple of weeks when you land at what you end up doing. I shared, for what it's worth, I shared that public repo here of how we do it.
Cool. Thank you.
Now, any other questions? Matt, come on. You got something?
I got something. Because it's funny, Michael's saying like, I haven't been around for like 6 weeks, and I feel like I haven't been around for 6 months. And yeah, of course I'm on the call and I'm like, I just should join these more often. How are you folks sharing prompts? And this is maybe a question to you, Eric, but we have a repository. We share an internal prompts repository that, people push prompts to, that we have, maybe 20. And I am finding that I have like no understanding if my team is using those prompts or not. And I question if they need to, I think they should be like versioned, but like, do they need to be in code? I don't know. Does that create a barrier to entry, or not a barrier to entry, but like a friction that causes it to be frustrating? But I'm just interested in, what are people doing around sharing prompts when it's like, hey, we have very definitive things that we do regularly across the team. What's the best way to facilitate sharing those when we know that there's something that we want to be driving through AI?
And I don't want to answer your I'll say I don't want to answer your question, Matt. I actually wanted to append to it by saying if you're sharing your prompts, how do you tag the model and provider that you use the prompt with? Because if you say, hey, this is the prompt that I use and it worked for me, great. Background metadata is that you use that on Claude with whatever Claude version. Somebody takes that to Gemini, uses it, whatever Gemini, and they get something different, So how do you say this prompt works great on Claude? Mileage may vary if you use it somewhere else, So do you capture that along with the prompt? I'm just appending to your question.
For sure. And I think it's an interesting point.
You create a meta prompt that you only have one prompt that it goes and then retrieves the prompts from the other locations. I'm just kidding. I have no idea.
Maybe that's not a bad idea. But yeah. Do you do anything in that regard, Eric?
Well, I don't know if you heard the part where I was talking about what we're doing in Atmos, but we have the agent developer agent, which I created just so I could create more agents more efficiently. And it has instructions on keeping the agents up to date. So when things relating to that agent change, that the instructions for that agent are also updated. It's always best effort, right? And the biggest thing I'm finding is getting the triggers to consistently work is not always a thing.
Okay. Interesting.
But that almost also relates to our problem, right, with our module ecosystem. I would love to have, Claude instructions with those as well. But should we really copy those into every repo? And if we copy them into every repo, then we're going to start getting pull requests to them, and then they get out of sync, and we'd have to definitely block pull requests trying to change those.
Yeah, and we do have one means by which we share prompts today. There was a Circle CI tool of all things called Rule. Let me see.
You're using Circle CI?
No. Circle CI had a
okay.
That's why I'm saying it's kind of weird. Circle CI created a cool tool called Rule Tool, and it's basically a thing that'll symlink we use it for cursor rules, but I think you could essentially use it for any of these instruction files, any prompts, and my team is it's Rule Tool, RULE.
Oops,
sorry.
I spelled that.
But it is. I thought it was Circle CI. I'll share the link. But it is something my team is using, not something that I think that we really taken off in terms of our usage. And my thing is that I just, a team member will be like, yeah, I, went off and built this thing. And I'm like, damn, we totally have done that a number of times. We need to consolidate that down, and we need to have a prompt for it. But then we even have prompts for things where a team member will go off and oh yeah, I went off and build this thing. And it's we had a prompt for that. Damn it. And I wish that, we had a better way to kind of collectively share and push to use these things more. One of my team members is using Cloudflare, and that looks interesting because there is some automated skill triggering that occurs when certain keywords match what you're building. But yeah, if there isn't a definitive way of doing this, or if nobody here has experience, I think I'm searching for something that just hasn't come up yet. This looks interesting. Team member was just using it today and was excited about it, and we're gonna look into it more. But yeah.
Yeah, the triggering should be built into Claude itself. No, I don't think it's something that this tool is doing, Cloudflare itself, is it?
This was triggering skills automatically. So instead of doing slash commands, it'll essentially it'll wire those in when you say, hey, natural language activated skills. So it adds a bunch of its own skills, but then I think it gives you the capability to add, trigger skills accordingly.
Yeah. No, I think you're getting into, I think that's probably where something like this belongs, is in the tooling that you're using, that it should have some support. Like Warp has its notebooks as a way of sharing things with team members. Maybe, if you consolidate on one of these tools, then you can get some of that. I think the problem happens for us is like we got the IntelliJ crowd, the Cursor crowd. Now, me, I'm Conductor and Claude Code, and getting convergence on that is hard.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. We're all over the map. We have people using Kiro. We have people using Claude. Claude is definitely a standout. I think a lot of people love Claude, but
How are you finding Kiro? That's the one by AWS, right?
It's the one by AWS. It's very spec-driven, or at least I've used it in a spec-driven capacity, and spec-driven can be good, and it can be, maybe overkill for a lot of things. But I think that if you're trying to build a project sustainably, spec-driven feels like a good thing. I need to use it because I have that like road to reinvent thing where we have to use Kiro coming up. And I feel like I'm going to be behind the ball in terms of the rest of my team. So I'm trying to use it more. And there's some good things going on with it. It definitely has, I don't know. The more we're all talking in this space, it's the more I realize like, everybody's trying to move fast, but there's a lot of things coming out. Like the one thing I saw this week, and maybe you already talked about it last week or recently, is anti-gravity from Google.
We didn't actually talk about it. I saw it, but it just seems I saw it from Hacker News, and there wasn't even a screenshot of this product announcement. And it's like, wait, was this whole thing AI generated?
It doesn't look like their website doesn't sell me on like why would I use this over the other things, but too many tools. Convergence will happen maybe once the bubble bursts, and we'll see people.
So tell me more about this road to reinvent, or
so there was AWS put out a call to like all their AWS community builders and the heroes, and it was like, hey, anybody who's in North America can apply. The idea is we're going to take 50 people, put them into teams of 5, so 10 teams of 5, take 5 buses from LA to Vegas on not this Sunday, but the following, so the day before reInvent starts, and we're going to do a hackathon on the bus. So I somehow got selected, even though I was like very clear to them. I'm like, I do a lot of project management and wear 15 different hats every day. I'm not writing code all the time. But I got selected, and I'll be on one of the teams, and trying to figure out Kiro, because it's all about building with Kiro and trying to use their AI tooling and whatnot. So it should be interesting.
So is there going to be a challenge announced day of the event or something, and then everyone builds a solution for that? Or
exactly, like it should be like very specific, typical hackathon. Hey, you have you essentially get a prompt on, hey, this is the problem space that we're trying to, see products built in, build a product in. I think they're going to take their time to drive us from LA to Vegas, but I think we have less than 8 hours, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, that ride's about 4 hours without traffic.
Without traffic, and maybe we'll expect some traffic for sure. It's going to be Sunday. Usually the traffic would be going back to LA. Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, you could get on that ride back from Vegas. You could get a lot done. I mean, I've been in like 18-hour traffic jams trying to get out of Vegas back to LA.
I've never done it. I've heard nightmares from friends in LA. And we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are at time for today, folks. Thanks to you so much for joining Office Hours. Hope you got something out of it. We'll be posting a recording of this session to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/cloudposse. The recording will be up in just a couple of hours. If you're interested in getting any support from Cloud Posse, that's how we sustain our open source ecosystem. Just go to cloudposse.com/support, and you can find a offering that fits your needs and budget. We have our live office hours every week. Never missed a beat. Go to cloudposse.com/office hours to register and get your invite. We have our Slack community at cloudposse.com/Slack where you can join and participate. We have discussions there often around things in Terraform, Atmos, and our open source. If you are a contributor to Cloud Posse's open source, or you need a pull request reviewed, expedited, this is the best place to go, is to our Slack team and go to the PR reviews channel. All right, everyone, thank you for your time this week, and I'll be back next week from the slopes of Breckenridge. Take care.